YouTubers, Barry here, just filming as usual in front of my break front on a brew day. I'm brewing a Saison. It's going to be a tart Saison because I'm using, as I said in my last Homebrew Wednesday, I'm using the Yeast Bay's Farmhouse Sour Ale, which has lactobacillus in it. So I don't know if I'm going to do a grain to glass for this one. If I do, it'll be different because instead of the real brewing process, which I'll tell you about in a second, it's the fermentation that really going to create, turn this beer as a yeast forward style with lacto, especially, is going to turn it into what really, I envision it being, which is like, a nice tart, refreshing, about 6% beer. Now I'm drinking in my Luminaries glass my favorite Hefeweizen, which is of course, the Weihenstephan Hefeweiss beer. So perfectly balanced, cloves and a little bit of banana and lemon, and just so nice. I find that a lot of the other Hefeweizens from Germany either are too much banana and not enough clove, or just too malty sweet in general. Even though I do like Schneider Weiss from time to time, it's a little too sweet. So this one is really, the Weihenstephan is really the only authentic German Hefeweizen for me that's balanced and just perfect on all the yeast notes that it's known for, the style is known for. And cheers. Oh yeah, perfect. Finish is dry, refreshing, crisp. So, anyway, so let me put the beer down for just a second, so I can talk to you. So for this beer, two unique things is that I started the mash a little high at 153. It ended up losing like 3 degrees in like the 75 minutes, which is weird. It might be partially due to the fact that it's a very small 10-pound grain bill, but I have a feeling that my mash tun insulation isn't as good as it was 2 years ago when I first started using it. So I might from now on put a blanket over it until maybe one day I do get a new one. But lost, like, there was some at the end, even though I stirred it at one point during the mash, there were spots that said 148 and spots that said 149, 150, so in that range. So I'm assuming that for the style, it was fine, but some people say to mash sours or tart beers higher, but in general, just for lacto, and there's no Brett or PDO that need those extra, dextrins and sugar, complex sugars to really be left over at the end of primary fermentation, so they get what the brewer's yeast doesn't get to. With lacto, you're not really worried about that because it really likes simpler sugars anyway. So I'll show you some footage of brew day in this video, and then if I do a grain to glass, like I said, I'll be focused on the fermentation and development of the tartness of the beer rather than brew day itself and gravity samples and all that. I'll only really I'll focus any samples I take on how the tartness is developing. And the Yeast Bay and a lot of other home brewers that I've talked to about this strain say it takes 2 to 3 months to develop. So in order to help that move along, I'm going to use, instead of 1 vial in this 5.5 gallon batch, I'm going to use 2 vials. They say not only to ferment at a higher temperature like you would for a Saison, but like lacto likes higher temps. They say also to keep the IBUs low. And because I want to use Sriracha Ace hops for this to give it a nice peppery, lemony tart Saison, and it's a big high alpha acid hop. I decided that instead of like using half an ounce to give it like 5 or 6 IBUs, and in 3 months I'm not going to get any of that aroma anyway, probably. So what I'm going to do, and recommendation of Danny ABA, is to not use any hops and just boil the wort for 90 minutes to concentrate it down to my target of 1050, 1051 original gravity, and then cool it down, it's about 70 degrees, 68, something like that, ferment it, between 68 and 70 for the first few days so it doesn't create too many esters, and then let it rise up a little bit over the next few days. So that's the plan. So I'll shoot you off to some brew day footage. Happy Homebrew Wednesday, and I'll see you soon. Cheers. Alright, so here we're pouring over the second liter of my Saison wort from after mash out. So the pan got a little tipped, but should still pour over pretty, you know, this is just to slow down the flow anyway. As you see here, it's a nice light gold color, or straw color compared to the darker first runnings there. Which in daylight, you know, is going to be much darker, but it's, you know, a reddish color, you know, because it's more concentrated, and it's just under 2 gallons. So here's the mash. It's mostly 8 pounds of Pilsner malt, 1.25 pounds, a little over, of white wheat, and 1 pound of Vienna malt. A very, very basic grain bill. And our target OG is only 1051. So that should be pretty good. So what I'm going to do now, as usual, is to start collecting my runnings, my second runnings, and once the mash settles a little bit more, I'll start to sparge it. And because I have a lot of sparge water, and I don't have like an insulated tank, and I'm going to be using about 3.5 gallons of sparge water for my brew kettle, I'm just going to keep just dumping in, you know, with either a liter or my gallon jug, you know, a little bit at a time, just to keep the sparge water, almost 4 gallons that I have of sparge water prepared, at a good temperature, you know, instead of it, you know, so that it doesn't dip too far below 165. Alright, so we're here with the pre-boil gravity. So my target at 7.2 gallons, which I usually use as my target volume for a 5.5 gallon batch, was 1046. As you'll see in the picture here, I hit 1045 on the dot. So 1 point off at and I think I got between 7.1, 7.2 gallons, which still gives me a little over 82% mash efficiency. So yes, it's not a huge grain bill, but for me, hitting my numbers and, you know, getting the runoff nice and slow is, you know, what I'm going for nowadays. So yeah, so now we're just gonna wait for the wort to come up to a boil, and once it gets there, I'll show you what it looks like. Cheers. So as you see here, we're pretty much at the end of the boil. I'm giving it maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, because I added the wort chiller with 5 or so minutes left, and I just want to make sure that anything that's on it will be killed by the boil, you know, before I start the chilling. In terms of original gravity, our goal was 1051. We hit that, maybe 1052. I'll take another reading once I cool the wort down, because for this one I just wanted to make sure that I, you know, hit my numbers. So, you know, with a few minutes left, I took a refractometer and it said I hit my numbers, which is 1051 again. So to ferment this beer, I was going to use a bucket and use a swamp cooler method, but I decided that since I'm aging it for 3 months, even if the whole 3 months might not be in my firm fridge, it'll be easy, much more guaranteed to prevent it getting oxidized, because, you know, a carboy, whether it's PET, a better bottle, or glasses, has a better seal anyway, than a bucket. So I didn't want to risk it for a beer that I'm aging, so I'm going to end up having to buy another 6-gallon better bottle or a big mouth bubbler down the line, but I have another one for my next clean beer, which is going to be a hef. So either way, we're good to go. I want to give you a quick update on the fermentation of my, right now it doesn't have a name, I'm just calling it my lacto Saison. Usually in Beersmith I give a rough name to the recipe, and then once, as I manage fermentation, as I'm brewing the beer in some cases, I give it an official name, but right now in Beersmith it's still lacto Saison. But by the time I post this video, hopefully it'll have an official name. So right now we're fermenting it at 22.6 degrees, which is between 72 and 73 degrees. The range for this yeast, according to the yeast bay, you know, again, we did 2 vials of the Farmhouse sour ale, is 70 to 78. For lacto, though, sometimes you want it hotter than that. But what happened with me is that I didn't think, you know, to make a starter because it's such a low gravity beer, and the official original gravity is 1055, which is over by 4 points. That's because, as you see here, instead of collecting like 5.5 gallons, which would be somewhere like over there, just above, you collect like 5.25 because they boiled for a little extra in the beginning and at the end. So I boiled off a quarter of a gallon or so more than I wanted it to. But as you see here, it's bubbling nicely now. But for the first about 40 hours, it really wasn't doing much. It really took till when I checked it. It really took a long time to get going. So this morning on day 2, on Tuesday when I'm filming this, because I brewed on Sunday, I quickly emailed Nick, the head or the founder of the Yeast Bank. He said that, you know, even with 2 vials, you know, the yeast, you know, cell count in the vials is pretty low, so even with pitching 2, you might have a longer lag time. But he did recommend that since I hadn't really seen like tons of sign of like fermentation or a visible sign, because you know the bacteria in these could be working without a krausen. He said to take it out, rouse it, and then see where to go from there. And you know, and in a couple of days, take a gravity sample. So what I did was I took it out, I roused it, I raised the temperature just a little bit, even though it's not going to really start going up much until the fermentation really kicks off, like going crazy, if it chooses to do so. But a few hours after doing that, I came back and checked it, and it was bubbling more. And now, a few hours after that, it's starting to form a nice white foam over the top. I don't know if it's going to turn into a full-fledged krausen, because I guess I've never fermented with a blend of, you know, Saison yeast and lacto. But as you can see, it's a really nice looking white foam over the top. So, actually, I should mention though that, you know, I was kind of not so worried about not seeing that foam forming early, because people in the Milk the Funk Facebook group said that, at least a couple people said, you know, that for like first 4 to 5 days they didn't see, you know, a huge amount of visible signs of actual fermentation, like, you know, bubbling and a krausen. But for me, what I did, you know, I took the initiative to email the Yeast Bank and get advice, and rousing the yeast is what got things started for me. So now that it's bubbling like this, like a normal ale yeast would, I'm kind of more confident that the beer is gonna, you know, take its course and become a really good beer. So when I have another update, I'll make sure to film it. Cheers.